unquantifiable what the Angels have done for Australian music. They are what Australian rock and roll is all about.
A lot of the style is, was born out of the Brewster Brothers, the guitar style, and that's a very unique Australian thing. AC/DC have it, Rose Tattoo had it as well, a twin guitar thing.
Did AC/DC influence? Absolutely.
When the band was on fire, live, yeah, it was pretty hard to top that.
Well, Doc Neeson obviously is unforgettable and will always be a huge part of the legacy of the Angels.
Has a presence second to none. He takes the stage, he commands attention.
He's fascinating. He's an interesting human being, and that's his job.
That thing of connecting with people is the greatest gift of all, I think.
It was the overwhelming assault that just sucked people in. It was a way for people just to go get pissed and pummeled and jump up and down. It's just the Roman Colosseum, without the blood. Well, no, I can't say without the blood, because there was an awful lot of that too.
I used to find that the songwriting sometimes was more satisfying than being out on the road just gigging.
I mean, a lot of people think that Doc wrote all the words, but it's not true at all.
By the time they got to record some of the later records, some of the relationships were getting a bit strained.
It's amazing how passionate you can get over whether you should say but or and in a line.
Being a bit of a control freak that I am.
Seemingly benign issues like, perhaps we should play this song, and somebody else said, no, I don't want to play that song, I want to play this song. And that could blow up.
Because there's a huge amount of animosity and unresolved issues.
They had a few lineup changes. I watched them go down.
No, hang on, we can do that. We can go out and play without Doc.
They just want him out of their life. They used to say some horrible things about him, which used to really pee me off.
Somebody got sick of it, and so we ended up in court.
It's not all hugs and kisses inside a band,
The poor punters, Angels fans, I'm so sorry.
The result is Doc's now got a brain cancer. Chris has left the planet, and the legacy of the Angels is something which I would say that there are tribute bands that sound better.
Take me away to myself.
It started a really good surfing buddy of mine, Pete Thorpe. We used to go down the coast surfing, and then we'd go get ourselves crazy at somebody's party on a Saturday night or something. And Pete turned to me, he said, when you take your guitar to parties, he said, I'd love to play along with you. And I said, well, what do you play? And he said, I don't play anything. I said, well, what do you want to play? And he said, I don't know, but I'd love to learn an instrument. And I said, well, why don't we start a jug band? So we went up to my brother, who was doing classical piano at the time and doing brilliantly at it. And we said, we're going to start a band. Do you want to be in it?
She never stumbled. She got no place to fall.
It all began as a fun uni band part-time thing. And we were all studying. And we just did it on certain nights of the week, which ended up being probably 5 nights a week, because people liked it.
John Brewster was at that point playing banjo, although he could play really good guitar, banjo and very good harmonica, and we had a guy on string bass with a wash tub.
And in those days, Doc was a guitar player. He sang a few songs. He wasn't the front man. But it was a lot of fun, and we did very well with the band. It became really huge in Adelaide. We started writing songs and realised very quickly that what we were writing rock and roll songs and trying to fit rock and roll into basically a band that came from the music was basically from the 20s.
I know we talked about Sherbet and Skyhooks. We said, look, they're getting their records played. We could do that. In fact, we could do that better.
So we went and bought electric guitars and amps and stuff and started what was then the Keystone Angels, which started off being bloody awful.
Hey, you gotta keep on dancing. Come on, come on, come on, come on, keep on dancing.
We did 3 gigs with AC/DC, and they were Port Pirie, Whyalla and Port Augusta. And that was 1975, and we were still the Keystone Angels. And Angus and Malcolm and Bon came up to me and Rick, and I think Doc was with us at the time, and started telling us about Harry Vander and George Young.
George and Harry were a production team at Albert Music, and Malcolm and Angus were in AC/DC. So they went back to their big brother George and said, you should check out this band that we've been touring with.
They must have seen something in us. I didn't think we were that good, but we were getting better as we played. We came across here from Adelaide and played Checkers. I think it was a Monday night. We were playing Checkers, which is in Goulburn Street, just around the corner from where we are now. And Harry and George, Bon Scott, Angus and Malcolm, we saw them walk down the stairs. We had a meeting in Casey's office. Casey was the guy that used to run the venue. And we went into the studio the next day with an acoustic guitar, sang some songs, and they signed us up.
And it was really quite interesting because when they came in, they were so different to the acts that we had. Not necessarily musically, but because we already had some really good rock artists on the label with Stevie Wright and with AC/DC. And we were also looking at Rose Tattoo at the time. And it's just that, the stature of these guys were quite small, and they were all, they all came from the School of Hard Knocks. And then you had these really tall guys come in who are all, university grads. And the lead singer, who was like so charismatic and articulate that it was a real, I thought, how is this going to work? And I was a little bit bemused. And then as they started working with George and Harry, the Keystone fell away and became the Angels.
And we felt elated and vindicated that somebody believed in what we were doing. And it was, we sort of felt like we were on our way.
Face Again was mainly Doc's song, and we just thought it was fantastic, and we demoed it, and so that was our first single.
Am I ever gonna see your face again?
Am I Ever Gonna See Your Face Again is really the signature song today. But I can assure you when it came out, nobody could have given a rat's ass about the song. I couldn't give it away.
When FIFA went to take our record in, she decided rather than take it in as and it showed the Angels, she made it kind of anonymous, and it's called a white label, and so there was no information on it.
It was really hard work on their part and all of our parts in trying to get, because we believed in it, we just stuck with it, and we kept going back to radio with it. We knew it was going to work, but it just took time.
Am I ever gonna see your face again? No way, get fucked up! Am I ever gonna see your face again? No way, get fucked up!
It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if it's probably even the Pope. Someone still comes back. They all come back with that response, which didn't start off like that. It was started off it came about much later, but it now is just part of the song.
We got to play to about 50 or 60,000 people from Memphis on the banks of the river on Independence Day. Can you believe it? But out there in the audience, somebody was saying, "No way, get fucked, fuck off." And it was just, yay, Aussie. It was great.
Am I ever gonna see your face again? Am I ever gonna see your face again?
We'd really only recorded one single with Charlie, and we had to make that change. No offence to Charlie, but it wasn't right. You know, Doc was on the bass, and it was a band that wasn't really going to get there, you know. So we just put the feelers out for a drummer.
My dream was to, from age 11, when I saw Hard Day's Night, was to play drums, write songs, and make music, and you know, tour around the world. That was my dream. And an agent friend of mine rang me and said, "There's this band from Sydney, signed to Albert's Records, being produced by Vanda and Young, and they need a drummer."
So he jumped on it. I have a feeling that he saw it as a short-term thing.
I signed a contract which signed away all my rights forever. Backstage just around the corner at Checkers, pissed and stoned. And I went, "Yeah, well, okay." I'll sign that. And within 2 days, I'd played a couple of things to John, and we'd written a song called Shelter from the Rain, and another one called Can't Get Lucky, which were on the first album.
Vanda and Young were very good at, you know, working out what the strengths of a band were and what the weaknesses were. And they really felt that Doc should have been a front man without the guitar.
Although John, I think, was hoping he would be the lead singer, it was pointed out that he might have had, you know, a technically better voice, but Doc actually had a personality and a presence that would be a great frontman. So who are we going to get to play bass? And I went, Chris Bailey.
Of course, we all lived in Adelaide when we were young, and so I'd seen John and Rick play in the Moonshine Jug and String Band and Doc, and but then kind of lost track of them. Buzz had sent me some of the demo tapes that they'd been working on in the studio, and you know, I thought, wow, there's I don't know what it is, but there's something going on there with that twin guitar attack that the Brewsters have, and there were some interesting lyrics for these rough songs at the time, and I thought there's something going on there.
I think from that point, when the five of us got together, I think that's when the Angels started.
Well, it was very exciting, and we were working with George and Harry, so it was like working with gods, and it was a chance to bring out our first batch of original material.
It was a very country record. There's some really quite simple, interesting country songs on it.
I want to tell you that I get high on you. I get high on you. There's no one else who can do what you do. I get high on you.
When they started, they tried a lot of things, as most bands do. There were very few bands that, if you look at them when they started, are the same bands that you see today. It takes a development period within themselves, even when they've got the band together, when they've got the right, you know, lineup.
Definitely a band searching for a direction. We were still learning. God, I was playing lead guitar, and all I'd ever played was an acoustic guitar and a washboard and a piano.
I remember lots and lots and lots of hard work, of rehearsal and rearranging and rearranging.
We were playing 6 nights a week, sometimes, lots of times 7 if we could do it. And so after a show, we'd then go into the studio and work there until, I don't know, I often remember coming out around about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Then you go home and crash for a while, and then get up and go to a gig and then go back to Albert's.
Vanda and Young worked very closely with Doc and John and Rick, because they were the songwriters, and George and Harry's strength's always been in songwriting. They've always been able to really help writers hone that side of their creativity.
They didn't know what the direction was either, but they had faith in us, and we had faith in ourselves. So we did that album with them producing, with what we had, those songs, those skills, you know, playing okay as a band.
That album did okay. I think it went gold.
Harry and George produced Coming Down on Me, which was that was sort of another song that has now become one of our biggest songs ever. but we put that out as a single, still produced by Harry Vanner and George Young, and radio didn't take to it. So, you know, we were dying, literally financially dying in the bum. It was just going like this, you know. It was very worrying times. We were starting to think, oh God, we might have to give this away. And then to top it all off, Harry Vanner and George Young took me and Rick outside the studio one day into the corridor, and they said, we want you guys to produce the band. And my initial reaction was that I was a bit offended by it, because I thought they'd lost interest.
For them to be allowed to do that, there must have been confidence in their ability.
I said, well, how do you produce? And they said, you'll be fine, we're just down the hall. If you got stuck for, you know, and Rick and I often did go down the hall and knock on the door, and which is why they're listed as executive producers of Face to Face. But we were sort of thrown in the deep end. Mark Opitz was there with us.
He really cut his teeth on the first album with them, with George and Harry by his side, and he obviously grew with that and got to know the band really well, got to know the music, got to know their abilities, and was able to bring all that to the fore.
I think what Mark brought was he managed to befriend everyone in the band. He had his favourites, but what he did was have an ear on the sound, and when we would come to him with Sex Pistols records or whatever and say, we want to sound like that, or we want the guitar sound like that, he'd know how to get it.
At the same time, John came in with I Ain't the One. I make it sound like it was, he brought the song in, bang, we're there. It was not really like that. There was a lot of songwriting going on, but that was the first one that really clicked.
I ain't the one, I ain't the one, I ain't the one to judge.
And then it was furious songwriting. You know, the same week, I think, I was in the dressing room at Checkers, started playing the Take a Long Line riff.
Take a long line, take a long line, take a long line.
And then Straight Jacket came along.
They're putting words in your mouth, say I talk like them, dressing you up in a straight jacket.
And we recorded that song in the midst of an argument, because they were really pissed off with me, because I was being really pushy, which I shouldn't have been. But nevertheless, out came this great rhythm track, which is Straight Jacket, and it actually came out of anger. You know, like, you could actually hear the anger in that song.
They're putting words in your mouth, say I talk like them, dressing you up in a straight jacket.
Huge creative tension, mostly between me and John. We usually saw eye to eye musically, but when we didn't, other people would leave the room. They couldn't stand it.
Arguing about whether it should be two verses and a chorus and a bridge and a solo, or whether Marseille should have the solo at the end or in the middle. So it was a constant working, reworking, playing them to George and Harry, them saying, well, I didn't like that chorus, try another chorus.
We watched George's right foot, and if the right foot was going like that all the way through the song, we knew he had a chance that he's going to say, yeah, that's good. And whenever George said it's good, he would just go, yeah, nice one. And that was about as far as he ever went. He'd never go, whoa, wow, that's incredible.
Take me away to Marseille. Take me away to Marseille. Marseille.
A really important thing was how we had evolved as a musical style, and you know, particularly what we call the knick-knacks, like just playing the eighths. That was a major break from how we were playing guitars before that.
Because Doc had a mid-range voice, so in a full tilt rock band you could actually still get his voice through by buttoning down in the verses and then powering out in the choruses.
Face to Face was a really strong album. There was a real strong concept with that, and also the imagery had started, it was defined. You know, the look of the Angels was defined with that.
There was a whole thing that went with this. You know, Doc started getting into, you know, like Bertolt Brecht expressionism on stage. He got the suit with the ascot tie, and he started doing things with it, which I'm sure Pete Garrett might have had a look at, with his eyes and with his hands, and he'd say things like, you know, check your keys for doors, and weird things, and people go, oh, that guy's really out there, you know. So all these things all combined at the one time, and suddenly we just had this whole thing that was definitive of the band.
And the album went on to be in the charts for 79 years. I wish. But 79 weeks, which still is an Australian record and is only beaten by Pink Floyd. So there.
The second album made us not a one-hit wonder. We were at that point a two-hit wonder.
We were trying to follow a huge album and do it effective, you know, do a good job of it. And so, and we also had a time limit because they needed it. All the powers that be needed the album soon. So what we did, we took a leaf out of Harry and George's book. They used to write songs with a tape loop.
So quarter-inch drum loops, there's not a quarter-inch machine here, just quarter-inch tape, and you just play. And you'd play one bar, and then you'd just loop it around like that, and you'd have it going around pencils and things, and it'd just keep going until you press stop. It was like a drum machine.
And if we wanted the song to be faster, we'd just turn it up. So the drums are going faster, and we come up with these ideas like Save Me, No Exit.
We were writing songs that went on No Exit at the same time as we were writing songs for Face to Face. They weren't rejects from Face to Face, but we only had so many songs we could fit on the album. So in a sense, No Exit was kind of son of Face to Face because of that connection with the songwriting. But the good thing was that it kept us still in that same songwriting attitude.
You know, we would stay up all night writing. Like Mr. Damage, I was up literally all night after a gig, after meeting the guy called Damage at Comb and Cutter, Blacktown. I just went home with Damage in my head, and I stayed up all night, wrote the song, or the guts of it, and brought it to the Stage Door Tavern the next night.
Waiting for Mr. Damage. Walks through the door of the sacrificial church. Meet you in the lobby and you leave you in the lurch.
But it was that furious pace of creative energy. We've got to get an album that is going to be equal or better than Face to Face.
I mean, we worked so hard. We toured for 11 months of the year, and we played 6 nights a week. So after a while, it gets a bit silly.
But I got one of these big E-size cylinder of nitrous and put it in the corner, and we used to arrive at the studio, and one by one we'd go up to the corner, put our mouth over the nozzle, turn it on. Hiya, John. Hiya, Mark. John will hold our breath.
Tell me truths that have no meaning, live in rooms that have no ceiling. Now your friends are all departed, so your secrets closely guarded. Shadow boxer, shadow boxer, shadow boxer.
No Exit did what we hoped for.
It just really confirmed that we had a solid act, that it wasn't, you know, just a one-hit wonder, and the writers were actually good writers, and that all the work that had gone into the first album and growing them into the second album and the third album confirmed that it was all going the right way.
Watch out when you're all alone, locked inside your safety zone. You might find that you have turned to stone.
So we got to the end of 1979, and the Brains Trust in the band decided to buy out of our Alberts deal.
We'd had an offer from a US label, and our manager then, John Woodruff, went into Alberts and said, we've got this offer, and the band was very keen to get across to the States.
He basically went overseas, came back, said Epic want to sign the band, and he thought we should leave Alberts because he thought Alberts wanted too big a slice of the pie or something.
I could see no way of getting what ended up being well over $1 million in tour support out of an Australian company of that size.
I know that there was a fantastic relationship between Vander and Young and the band, but I believe management had other views, and I didn't know them at the time. I didn't know what had happened. All I was told was that the band was no longer on Alberts, which blew my socks off.
We thought there was no other choice. I've since found that Alberts were actually planning to do what they'd done with AC/DC with the Angels, but they hadn't really formalised all that, so they had nothing to offer us back at the time.
They'd been advised to get rid of the middleman and go directly to the overseas company instead of going through a label.
It was a big mistake because even though we probably were on a better slice of a pie, the pie was smaller. We never, if we'd stayed with Alberts, we would have been playing with AC/DC all around the world.
The ingredients that made everything work with that band at the time was what was there, and when you take out the majority of the ingredient, when you take out, the direction, the comfort in knowing someone's there to actually rearrange things for you and sort things out, I think that they missed that a lot, and it reflected a little bit in the way it went on for them.
Look, there will always be, and as I get older I can understand it more, heartache from Albert's point of view about that situation, and it took me a while to work out that they weren't entirely wrong in that situation, because I believed for the longest time they were.
We bought out of our contract. That was $125,000, which is a lot of money in those days. That's $25,000 each. Where did we get that money from? We got an advance from Epic Records, who signed us. They gave us $125,000. Great. That's gone. That just went straight to Alberts. The thing that reared its ugly head, and has always been a thorn in the side, I think, of my involvement in the Angels, and I think most bands will have this. All of the costs of touring and running the band come out of the money that the band makes, not what the writers make. So if the band makes, $100,000 for a year and it costs you $100,000 to run the band, then nobody in the band makes any money. But if you've done $100,000 worth of business and you've sold 500,000 records, then all of a sudden the writers have made a hell of a lot of money. And then we turned around and said, we've got to make a record, Darkroom. How are we going to do that? I tell you what, we'll get an advance from the record company. Okay, how much will it cost? $100,000. All right, here's another $100,000. So there's $225,000 straight up that we're in the red, right? Where did that money come from? It came from the band's royalties, not the songwriter's royalties. So it was like, ask the question, are you into splitting some royalties back to the songwriting royalties back to the people that don't write, because we're actually helping make you rich? Nope. Sacrosanct, never going to do it.
She keeps no secrets from you. She keeps no secrets from you.
And that was the first time that I got a song on a record when the band was big, and I got that. Doc and I wrote No Secrets. I co-produced No Secrets. I got it to sound how I wanted it to sound. I got a credit for it. And I went, you know what? This is kind of this was the dream,
I wasn't too keen on it The only reason because I saw it as being a little bit softer, because we were pretty hard edged at the time, and I just saw it as being a little bit poppy, softer. I was completely wrong. I'm happy to say so, because it was huge. It's a huge single.
She keeps no secrets from you.
The sad part about Darkroom is when Doc came in to do the vocal for No Secret, which was the same day that Bon Scott died, and that was a bummer, real big bummer, but probably spurred Doc to do something for Bon.
Obviously, we didn't record it at Albert's. Darkroom we did at Paradise. We had Mark Opitz engineering and a new producer, John Boylan,
who had produced Little River Band and Linda Ronstadt, two acts that I loved, but didn't really see why he was producing us, but he happened to be the A&R guy for the record company. That's why he was producing us.
That was a sort of a point, though, where I think we started looking at albums as albums rather than a collection of songs. So musically we were starting to really expand and grow.
But every bit of money that we earned went back to pay all these debts, you see. How many records do we have to sell to pay back? $225,000? That's a lot of records in that day and age. And it didn't stop there. We started touring overseas. Oh, we're going to go and tour America. Great. Fantastic. How do we do that? The record company will give you an advance. And you go, isn't that great? We went from making money to not making money. Right? And the band was one of the biggest bands in Australia. I find myself sitting in the Gramercy Park Hotel in New York in 1980. So we're $475,000 in the red to the record company. What does that actually mean to me? Let me think. Because I'm travelling around America in a bus, making $20 a day. So I worked out that we had to sell 4.5 million records to break even. That's when I'd start making money. And if we'd sold 4.5 million records, each of the songwriters would have made $1 million each. So I asked the question again. Do you guys, would you share some of your songwriting royalties with Chris and myself, who, although, I'd just co-written the biggest hit the Angels had had, I'll share some of mine. I'm happy to share some of mine. No, not going to do it. Never going to do it. It's never going to happen.
We had huge tensions with Buzz. We'd spent 6 months of 1980 overseas. He got an offer from a friend of his to get involved in a movie project, and he wasn't happy.
I'd had a fairly explosive relationship with John, so, it was best for me to get out of there anyway.
No big deal. Might have been happy about it.
Needless to say, I didn't speak to John, Rick. I saw Doc a couple of times. I always had a pretty good relationship with Doc, but I didn't speak to them for years.
Retrospectively, I think it's a shame that lineup had to have a lineup change at that very time, because we were right on the edge in the States. We were really going well.
When someone leaves the band, it's initially a big hole. And then there is a certain excitement about filling that hole.
So I got a call to go down and audition, and I was the first audition after lunch, which I think helped me. And it went great. It was very exciting, and it was sparks flying. It was great.
He was incredible. He was with the band for 19 years, and he gave it his all. but it did definitely change the dynamic.
I think you'd be foolish to think that any change of band member won't change the band in some way. And I think, even though I probably tried to be as respectful to previous arrangements and style, I'm a different person, so things are going to change a little bit. And in some cases, as the band went on with different people, things changed a lot.
Night Attack was the first album with Brent, and it's not one of my favourite albums. I think some really good moments on it, but for some reason I used a Fender Strat that I don't think sounds all that good. I don't know why I did it. I guess I just felt like a change, because I've always used a Les Paul, so I don't like my guitar sound so much on that record. And I think the record's a little bit stiff, maybe. City Out of Control is a really good song. Fashion and Fame is a really good song. But as an album, I don't think it quite did the magic.
And that was supposed to be the one that was going to break us in America.
Fame, passion.
We've been touring so much. We've been around America so many times. Buzz had already left the band at that stage. He'd left a year earlier. And it just wasn't the same. I woke up one morning and I was kind of seeing double out of one eye. Went to an eye doctor and he said, you've got a detached retina, into hospital straight away. No arguments, no bones about it. That's what you got to do.
I was living in LA at the time with a buddy of mine also named James, also a bass player. And he got a call from his buddy at Chrysalis Records and said, do you want to do this gig with this band? They're from Australia, their bass player is sick. Yeah, let's check it out. Here was a band who I'd never heard of, nor had anybody I knew heard of. And our first gig was in Fresno, in the middle of California, an agricultural sort of area, kind of a bleak place. And, there were thousands of people there. There was like 2,000 or 3,000 people in this giant theater. And I went, oh, okay. This is a bit of fun.
I did actually fly over to rejoin the tour after I'd recuperated, and I got there in time to do the last gig, which was in Los Angeles. And I remember the manager saying to me, well, look, Jim's done so many gigs now, it's probably better if we just let him do this last one. And I got all chesty about it, I said, well, no, I'm the bass player, it's my band, I'm going to play, And he said, well, all right, you can do it, but just don't screw up, So, all in all, things were getting a little tense probably between myself and the rest of the guys, and, in the last few months. And I think they got on so well with Jim, fresh blood. I don't think any of us wanted to go back to how it was. I think I rang up Doc and, when's the next rehearsal or when's the next gig? And Doc said, well, actually, you won't be doing any more gigs. We think the band's probably better if you're not in it. And I went, oh, well.
There were resignations that seemed to me falling from the sky, depending on whether they had a bad day on the road or not. It was one of the favourite bones of existence between me and one of the tour managers was who resigned today,
I mean, I remember sitting in the car outside Rhino Studios, which is just up the street from here, and with Rick and John and them telling me that, Doc's out of the band, he doesn't want to do it anymore, and, do you want to be the singer?
Doc pre-announced that Narara gig is going to be his last gig, and so he got involved with Bernie Cannon and they filmed it.
None of us wanted to be involved in the filming of it. The feeling was within the band, if this was going to be our last show, we just wanted to get the show over and done with and get on with our lives, But Doc had a different view.
Doc says it was all his thing, but in fact, very much ours as well, because we did all the mixing and the the music and stuff, but he actually did pay for the filming.
We had all this footage. We couldn't get anyone to. There was a massive cost. It was all on film. So Doc and Rod Muir put the squeeze on an advertising agency called J. Walter Thompson's, who then gave over their suite to edit these massive footage. And then when we couldn't find a television channel to run it, Muir bought an hour and a half of prime time on Channel 9 and sold the advertising through his station staff at Triple M and simulcast it. And it worked a treat. It was a great show.
And on the night, it was just fully tribal Australians bouncing up and down in the dust with fires burning off in the distance. You could just see shadows of bodies bouncing and arms waving and just tons of people. The adrenaline there was so high.
We all thought that was going to be our last gig, and that was, what, 83 or something? I've only been in the band 2 years. So we approached that with that in mind, and from my perspective, it was like, this is going to be a give-all. You know, this is my last chance with this band. This is going to be a last hurrah. All it did was rekindled a new spirit, and we went on, and it's just a great story.
Live, lady, live. Locked inside a dream world, wrapped up in the past. Diaries from tomorrow and today.
There was that much creative tension in the band when I first joined. We launched straight into doing an album. I brought a song over for the band that I'd written in hopes that Doc would sing it, and ended up on the album. We just slammed into it. We were having fun. We were trying some different things beyond lots of muted eighth notes, and it was eventually labeled the Quirky Angels album because it actually had some different grooves and some jams on it and stuff.
But it was a real representation of the lineup of Jim Hilburn, Brent Eccles, me, Rick and Doc that was very creative and very spontaneous. This place we're in at the moment has a fair bit of history with us and really great memories. Great memories. We used to down the hall here. There was a little studio called Studio C, and we did all the writing for the 2 Minute Warning album in that studio. And we'd record a demo, and we sent some of those over to America, and MCA signed us up. We were then told that we should make the album in America, so we did, and we went to LA, and we all had apartments, and we recorded in the record plant, and long story short, that album cost $450,000 to make. So it was like, we then played every bloody gig from here to Timbuktu to try and pay back the bank, because we'd spent way more than the advance. It was a big mistake. Had to remix it right here in this desk here. Had to remix it because we hated the mixes, so we had to do it all again and did it here. The money just kept on mounting up, and at the end of the day, it's not one of my favourite albums.
What was going on through the 80s was that record companies were sort of corporatizing. That really meant that one smaller record company got eaten by a larger record company. who didn't know, but a larger record company was coming up on its tail. In that process of different record companies taking over other record companies, wasn't always that we got kicked off their roster, but it meant that we had to work with new people, and so we had to keep starting again. Anyway, I think John just got jack of it.
I was really very pissed off with the whole 2-minute warning experience, the amount of money it cost us, and a very disappointing album. We then toured America. It was a joke tour. We went into areas which we were a major band in. We were supporting a dying band called Triumph, and I just got disillusioned about the whole thing.
There's lots of whys and wherefores and what could have been, but the reality is we didn't go hard enough.
I know Brent had his attitude was that we should stay in America and break the band on the 2-minute warning album, and I said we can stay there for the rest of our lives with that album. It's not going to happen because that album wasn't good enough, and sometimes you've got to face that.
And if it had it all over again, that's what I would have been saying. Come on guys, let's go and fucking live there.
So, I think I was right in my assessment of that album, etc., but I was a pain in the arse, to be honest with you, and I think the band were right to ask me to go.
It kind of had to happen, I think, and did.
We didn't speak for about a year, and we finally did. We had a coffee and we talked it through.
I suppose if I've ever suffered depression, it might have been around then, and it wasn't a real good time. I didn't have really good feelings about Brent Eccles at all. I still don't actually. So.
You can do a whole documentary on John Brewster, but I'm not going to go there.
Can't take anymore.
Well, the obvious difference is that Bob Spencer was there and John Brewster is no longer there. And that dynamic of energy made a whole different Angels, as far as I'm concerned, when Bob joined.
I joined the band, I guess by accident. There was no plan. Rick Brewster and I had remained friends for many years. And I said, so how's things going? And he said, oh, well, John just left the band. And I said, oh, if you need a guitar player, let me know. That was really it.
It's the nature of the beast to jump into the fire.
I think when John left, the first thing we did was we actually toured quite a lot with Bob. And out of that touring, I think quite a lot of songs come out.
I was always trying to think of a cover song that the band could do, but never could think of something that was appropriate for the style of the band. And I'd always loved We Gotta Get Out of This Place by the Animals, one of the just coolest songs of all time, and suggested it to the band.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine.
We enjoyed it so much that at one point we just said, well, let's actually turn it into our version, and we can just play it on stage. There wasn't any big plan initially to use it as a cover on an album.
It was so good that we were a bit frightened of it. It was like, we haven't really done a cover before, and look at that, wow, that's incredible. Can we release that? We weren't sure, no one was sure.
I kind of laughed. That's because when I was in the band, we were never going to do covers. And here they were doing a cover and having a huge hit with it. But I honestly went, good on you. Good decision. Great version of the song.
We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you.
You can't take a sentiment that's so felt the world over. Everybody wants a better thing. So, yeah, they nailed it on that one.
Girl, there's a better life for me and you.
I was told that Jim, we're considering getting another bass player. I went, okay. And I sat back, and there was Doc and Brent and Rick, and the producer Terry Manning had left the room, and they had a chat to me, and they kind of said what they said. I listened to it for about 15 minutes, and I went, okay. Had to think about it for a while and left the band.
Prior to Jim leaving the band, the guys had just been over to Perth doing a tour. We were playing at a little nightclub in Northbridge here, just out of the city, and Bob, Brent and Rick jumped up and had a jam with our band. Because Jim wasn't there, so I got to play bass. Not long after that, there was a thing in the newspaper saying Jim had left the band, and so I just went, hey, I want that gig, you know. So I rang up Brent, somehow got Brent's number, got no idea. Rang him up and said, look, I'm coming to Sydney, I want to audition for the band. Went to Sydney, next day, had a jam with the guys, got the gig. After the couple of rehearsals, it was like, have you got a passport? Yep. Okay, we're going to America next week.
And I say, never thought I'd care. Queen of the night, you got a heart of stone. Now that you're back, I can't leave you alone. Backstreet pickup. Backstreet pickup. Honey, where have you been? Good to see you again.
That was the first album that Bob Spencer was actually in the band before we recorded it, and his influence as a guitar player was quite strong in there.
Bob and Rick, yeah, musically, they came up with pretty much everything.
I thoroughly enjoyed working with Rick. It was great. We used to have great times in the days before emails. We used to have fax machines, and sometimes I'd have music, and Rick would just fax me a stream of consciousness lyrics, and then I would rearrange them and they would become a song.
Doc was left to the lyrics. Basically, he'd be fed, little sections of songs and that sort of thing. He'd take that away, go off on his own and come up with his with the Doc magic.
Being overseas to make it in Memphis was just kind of mind-blowing and really expanding for us. I also think we were at a time with the people involved, so me and Bob and Rick and Doc in the main. It was a real family kind of atmosphere, and it just clicked. And I look back at that record, and just about every track, you go, wow, that's a really good track.
We were feeling very positive about the future. We all felt that we were on the verge of something really big.
And the dogs are talking. The dogs are talking. The dogs are talking.
Absolutely. Dogs are talking. What does it mean?
It's just. I couldn't really tell you. It just seems to me like a sex and drugs and rock and roll kind of song.
So if the dogs are talking, it means there's kind of danger in the air.
I know that the intro is banned in North America.
There comes a time in a young girl's life when she first meets a man. There comes a time in a young girl's life when she becomes a woman.
That was cut off because they thought there was a censorship issue, and I thought, what? What's going on? Anyway.
Dogs Are Talking had tested #1 at a test radio station in America. The record company thought that we were going to be massive. There was definitely a feeling, a palpable feeling of success in the air, of finally breaking through to a worldwide market. And I believe the band had what it takes at that time to be a world force.
Beyond Salvation was obviously a very successful record. It wasn't, it's not one of my favourite records.
We we recorded another album's worth, which then became the basis for the next record.
You can tear me apart in slow motion.
I don't like the album. I think it's a terrible album.
I think that we tried a few things, conceptual things that really didn't work that well, and we kind of missed the point that you got to have some really good songs and some really good recordings, and I think that it could have been a lot better.
You didn't know what rock and roll was until you met a drummer on a Greyhound bus. I got there in the nick of time before he got his hands across your state line.
The thought of success may have freaked out some people in the band. Some members didn't want to go to America. Some members didn't want to tour America. Some members had issues with their wives and families that sort of them wanting to stay in Australia. I think that resulted in a backwards-looking album, and I'm not proud of the album. I don't think it's very good at all.
That was sinking a bit low, that one.
Gonna get some rest.
Around about the end of the campaign of Redback Fever, Bob Spencer decided he wasn't being musically satisfied, I guess, and he decided to leave, and we said that's okay.
I thought we were looking backwards. I thought there was a conscious effort by some people to have the band sound like the old version of the band, and the old version of the band was a great band. However, that's not the band that we were, and in fact, Beyond Salvation was the most successful album the band ever had.
We both left at 2:30 on the same day, I think it was. No, I don't know. Yeah, we did both leave at the same time. We'd been discussing it for a period of time. I think we felt that the fun and the creative value wasn't there for either of us.
So it was kind of me and Doc and Rick was spending a lot of time just writing stuff, and I had a call from a friend of mine in New Zealand who the Hells Angels New Zealand wanted the Angels to come and play a gig, and we discussed money and terms. I thought, this sounds pretty good, and I said to Rick and John, Rick and Doc, we should do this gig. And maybe we should ask John and Jim to come back and do it.
I was very surprised when I was on the phone with Brent, and Brent told me that John was back in the band, and I said something and he said something, and then he hung up on me.
Shop, trying to make enough to buy an 85-panel van. Wanna see a local band, gotta pay the rent and stay till the weekend.
I mean, Skin and Bone, I gotta say, was one of the most torturous albums we ever put together because it took a long time and it was done very homemade.
It was a tough thing to try and get that album going on. It wasn't like the old days.
Creatively shithouse, to be honest, is probably a better way of putting it. We tried really hard, but it just, for lots of different reasons, it was hard to really focus the band and get the writing process completed.
We did a lot of it up at Rick's house,
and there were a lot of oddnesses going on during the time, but we forged ahead, and it came out with a fizzle. And that was kind of that.
And that's actually the last album we've done with Doc Neeson.
Can't squeeze a drop of blood from this heart of stone. This heart of stone.
I've had a major car accident in the last 10 years, or just over 10 years, which involved my car being rear-ended by a truck. I'm a tall man, and as a result, it's like sort of, I got bad whiplash, but the taller you are, the more sort of crack there is to the whip. And so I had my back injured in 3 places from the whiplash, and I had my coccyx cracked in, my coccyx got cracked.
At first I was skeptical about the accident, which I think probably everybody in the band was for various reasons.
We had no idea that it had any impact on him. He seemed to be okay. I mean, he was getting around in a dog, like a surgical collar.
And Doc has had a difficult time physically and was, for a long time for various things. So, it's the cry wolf syndrome, I think, was going on.
We did Darwin on the New Year's Eve turn of the millennium, and as far as I was concerned, the Angels was an ongoing concern. It was after that Doc succumbed to whatever happened to him. I don't even know what happened,
My back specialist, who was also an Angels fan and knew how energetic my performance was, said, Doc, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll end up the rest of your life in a wheelchair.
So we thought, the next tour, we're going to have to blow the next tour out, which was a big one. We thought, we'll have to blow that out while Doc gets better. But Doc didn't get better.
For about the first 3 years after that, I could barely walk. In fact, to get to the bathroom, my back couldn't support me, so I actually had to crawl down the hallway to get from my bedroom to get to the bathroom. I started drinking quite heavily through that period as well, all part of trying to just cut the pain out.
It took a little while for Rick and I to kind of wake up to the fact that the band that we'd put most of our lives into and our career, that's our career, the Angels, didn't really exist anymore. Rick and I started the Brewster Brothers because we realised we didn't have a band anymore. So, and then we realised just how hard it is to start something new. Brewster Brothers, who the hell are they? I remember somebody saying, "Oh, are you a Blues Brothers tribute act?" It's like, well,
I get this call from John, and he said, "Oh, let's put a band together and call it the Original Angels Band. With Chris and you and me and Rick. We'll play Angel songs and, And I went, okay, sure.
And we did it quite successfully. It wasn't on the level of the Angels, but it was still really pretty good.
It was fun. John sang, we all sang. I sang a bit, It was kind of fun.
It was fine by me that they kept going, and it was what I thought they should do.
And at that point, we rang Doc and said, well, we've been getting these calls. Do you want to do some gigs just for fun? And he said, well, thanks, but no thanks. I've been doing the Angels for most of my life, and I think maybe I'd like to do something different. I'd like to do my own thing for a little while. Plus, physically, I'm not quite up to it. Doctor's advice is don't do it yet.
And then somewhere along the line we went, oh, bugger this, we're the Angels, so Doc's not in the band anymore, so we called ourselves the Angels, and Doc took us to court.
And we ended up in a room. The negotiation was that the 5 of us owned the name. The 5 who created the reputation in that name. We signed an agreement, a deed of arrangement with the Angels New Chapter. We all owned it. Only that 5 could play as the Angels. If anyone out of that 5 wanted to play Angel songs and with some Angel name, they could be Rick Brewster's Angels or Doc Neeson's Angels.
Because it was my band, I didn't have to ask anybody's permission to change the chord.
He got the okay from his doctors that he could play again. And then, of course, there was an issue with who was in whose band and what were the crowds going to see, It just got very confusing.
So we had this day of mediation in which Doc and I finished up in a room together, and we looked at each other, and David Edwards said, why don't you guys just get together again and play together? And I looked at Doc, and Doc said, well, I'd have to think about it. And I sort of said, well, I'd have to think about it too. And then we just kind of smiled at each other, and long story short, we did.
God, I mean, we just finished a whole court issue with lawyers and judges and QCs and the bills, God. And now we're getting back together to do a tour. It seemed odd.
We sort of achieved it for a while. Had some great shows, great tours.
And you could see people in the audience sort of pointing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there they all are. It's the original band. We played like demons, but within moments, it was like, well, you know, this is our band, John and Rick's band. And they go, what about Doc? They're always trying to get rid of him.
There were a lot of internal stuff going on that made it not a very pleasant experience.
I don't think any of us will forget what's happened in the past, one way or the other, for better or for worse.
And eventually, Doc left the band. We said straight away, well, you know, it's indefinite. What you're telling us is you're leaving the band, but you don't know if or when you'll come back. We're going to keep going.
Nah, the Angels has got Doc Neeson as the singer. You know, I didn't want to do that. I stopped playing with the Angels band because of that.
And then we picked up the pieces. We got Nick on drums. We still had Chris. And we got Dave on vocals.
I'm 20 feet above the ground, looking down, can't make a sound, hoping I won't fade away, waiting for the sun.
We're loving having Dave Gleeson in the band, and I think Dave, you know, and I don't want to make comparisons between Dave and Doc. I mean, they're both brilliant in their own right, and Doc was incredible front man. So we take that out of the equation.
I voiced that concern to John and Rick immediately when I came in. I just said, I don't want to be the whipping boy, and I don't want to, you know, don't want to detract from the Angels' legacy. And they assured me straight away that all the other stuff was going to have nothing to do with me.
He's just amazing. He's got energy. He's a great singer, very musical, great front man.
I remember when I first saw the Angels, it was the energy was just palpable coming off stage, and yes, I wanted to make sure that there was that I was faithful to the energy that the songs deserve.
John and Rick have gone out and played as the Angels, which kind of cuts across our agreement, and I'm not happy about that. But because they could call themselves, you know, the Brewster's Angels or something else, and I think it's in part what bothers me about it is that it kind of confuses the fans.
So Doc and I sought legal advice, 3 different legal advice, 3 different people, and they said, sure, you'd win that, easy, you got a contract, you got a signed contract. Now, you'll need 50 grand to start, then probably another 20, and you know, and I'm going, how much would it cost really? 100, and Doc and I just went, you know what, it's not worth it.
I'm very sad about the way things have gone. I understand everybody's points of view. I can understand Rick and John's point of view. I can understand Buzz, Doc. I get it. I'm not necessarily in agreement with anybody.
I think it's tragic that they are where they are today. It's a real shame because they had something fantastic going.
It's a shame that it went that way, and it's a shame that it couldn't have just corrected itself, but looking at it, it wasn't going to.
It's always a pity, and you always look at it and wish it wasn't there, but you know, it's part of the character, it's part of the volatility, it's part of what happens.
And then you just look at the body of work that we've done, and I think our biggest thing is the songs. Those songs are the bigger deal. They're bigger than we are. That's what I reckon.
somebody with whose medical authority I respect has said, you know, you've got something that's incurable, and statistically, it's likely to knock you off sooner than later. And
can you give me any definition of what they meant by sooner rather than later?
It's statistical. And I thought, how? Why take that? Okay, they also have said, but some people beat the odds and they live till they're, 50 or, 100, whatever. And then I thought, yeah, that's what I said. I said, why don't I just start living like I've got second odds?
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more wholeheartedly.
Well,
so let's get on with it.
It's great to hear you say that, and let's get on with it.